So let us start our today's topic. So we were discussing about assisted reproductive technology. Now you know what is assisted reproductive technology. It is a group of techniques or methods which help infertile couples to bear children or to conceive, right? Then we discussed causes of infertility. Then we were discussing perhaps how this assisted reproductive technology can help infertile couples to bear children, right? So for helping infertile couples to bear children, there is a method in assisted reproductive technology that is known as IVF, IVF-ET. Its full form is in vitro fertilization. In vitro fertilization. In vitro fertilization, embryo transfer. Embryo transfer. This is the full form of IVF-ET, in vitro fertilization embryo transfer. So what is in vitro fertilization? What do you understand by in vitro fertilization? In vitro means in glass. In vitro means in glass. Fertilization. So here the fertilization is carried out in a glass petri dish. In a glass petri dish. After carrying out fertilization in glass petri dish, a zygote is formed. That zygote is then allowed to go for cleavage divisions. That zygote is allowed to divide by, that is stimulated to divide by cleavage divisions. When zygote will divide by cleavage, the single-celled zygote, it will form a two-cell stage. These two cells are known as blastomeres. Then two-celled stage will give rise to four-celled stage. So there will be four blastomeres. Four will give rise to eight. Eight will give rise to 16. 16 will give rise to 32 cells, right? So in this IVF-ET, the ovum from female is collected, sperms from male are collected, right? Then they are put together in a glass petri dish. This is the ovum. These are the sperms. They are put together in a glass petri dish. Where a sperm fertilizes the ovum. When the ovum is fertilized, it becomes a zygote. This ovum was haploid, sperms were haploid. Now it becomes a diploid zygote. Then this zygote undergoes cleavage divisions. It forms two-cell stage, four-cell stage, eight-cell stage, 16-cell stage, 32-cell stage. So we say embryo formation begins. We say embryo formation begins, right? So this technique of fertilizing the ovum by sperm inside a glass petri dish, this is known as in vitro fertilization. This is known as in vitro fertilization. Then this embryo, it is transferred into the body of a female, right? If the embryo is transferred into fallopian tubes, if it is transferred into fallopian tubes, then it is known as ZIFT. Then we call it as ZIFT, zygote intrafallopian transfer. Zygote intrafallopian transfer. Now, if this embryo is transferred into fallopian tube, then we call it as ZIFT, zygote intrafallopian transfer. This zygote or this embryo, which is transferred into fallopian tube at 8-cell stage, this is known as ZIFT, right? Or at 32-cell stage, this embryo may be directly transferred into uterus. That is known as IUT. That is known as IUT, intrauterine transfer. Intrauterine transfer. Right? What is involved? What procedure? Which procedure is involved in IVF-ET? So in IVF-ET, first the ovum is collected from female, sperms are collected from male. Then ovum and sperm, they are put together in a glass petri dish where sperm fertilizes the ovum and it forms a zygote. Then this zygote is stimulated for cleavage division. It forms two-cell stage, four-cell stage, eight-cell stage. At 8-cell stage, we may directly transfer this zygote into fallopian tube. If the zygote at 8 cell stage is transferred into fallopian tube, then we call it as ZIFT, zygote intrafallopian transfer. If the embryo at 32 cell stage is transferred into uterus of the female, right? Then it is known as IUT, intrauterine transfer, right? You might have heard about test tube baby. Have you heard about test tube baby?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what is that test tube baby? That is a baby which is born through this technique, IVF-ET, right? When
Yes,
this
sir.
technique was first employed, when this technique was first used, zygote and sperms, ovum and sperm, they were fused together in a glass petri dish. But
Yes, sir.
media reported that zygote, this ovum and sperm, they were fertilized in a glass test tube. Media persons, they reported that ovum and sperms, they were fused together. Fertilization occurred in test tube. And they print it in the media that the baby which is born through this procedure will be known as test tube baby, right? Actually, fertilization does not occur in test tube. Fertilization does not occur in test tube. Fertilization was carried out in glass petri dish. But media persons reported that fertilization occurred in test tube. So for that reason, this baby which is born through this technique was known as a test tube baby, right? So test tube babies are those babies. Test tube babies are those babies which are produced, which are born through this IVF-ET, right? Now, when we transfer this embryo at 8 cell stage into fallopian tubes of the female, this embryo slowly trickles down. This embryo slowly trickles down, and it comes into uterus and gets implanted. So inside the mother's womb, the baby makes an attachment, placenta is formed, baby develops, and after 9 months, the baby is born. So this baby, which is born after 9 months, it is known as a test tube baby. This is known as a test tube baby. So test tube babies, they are not developed in test tubes. When I was a kid, when I was reading in class 12, I believed that test tube babies are the babies which are entirely produced in test tubes, right? So test tube babies are not developed in test tubes. Only fertilization occurs in glass petri dish. After fertilization, zygote at or this embryo at 8 cell stage, it may be transferred directly into fallopian tubes. That technique is known as ZIFT. After transferring it into fallopian tube, the embryo trickles down, it comes into uterus, it attaches itself to uterine wall, placenta is formed, and the baby for the 9 months develops in the mother's womb. When after 9 months the baby is born, so that baby is known as a test tube baby. Or sometimes at 32 cell stage, this embryo may be transferred directly into the uterus of the female, where this embryo gets attached onto the uterine wall. It develops normally, and after 9 months, this baby, which is produced now by IUT, this is also known as a test tube baby. This baby is also called as a test tube baby. So, test tube babies are those babies which are developed through IVF-ET, right? So,
Yes.
why test tube babies were formed? Why test tube babies were developed? What was the problem with their parents, right? So there are some females which have got one blocked fallopian tubes. What is the reason for going for this IVF-ET? So there are some females in which one fallopian tube is blocked, or there are some females whose fallopian tubes are structurally abnormal. So one fallopian tube may be blocked, or fallopian tube may be having malformed ampulla, or infundibulum may be malformed, right? So there are some females whose fallopian tubes,
Yes, sir.
one of the fallopian tube is blocked. So those females cannot conceive normally, easily, right? So those females whose one fallopian tube is blocked, they suffer from infertility. They mostly suffer from infertility. Although there are chances of natural fertilization, but those chances are very less. They are rare, right? So those females whose one fallopian tube is blocked, they suffer from infertility. Or there are some females whose ampulla of the fallopian tube is blocked. Ampulla of the fallopian tube is structurally abnormal. or infundibulum of the fallopian tube is structurally abnormal. This infundibulum, it does not have fimbriae in normal structure, or those fimbriae, they are not working well, right? Or the ampulla has internally blocked. So those females whose fallopian tube or fallopian tubes are structurally abnormal, they suffer from infertility. Similarly, there are some males who suffer from oligospermia. There are some males who suffer from oligospermia. So there are less chances of fertilization for them, right? Because their semen has got lesser number of sperms in it. So that reduces the chances of fertilization. And those males may suffer from infertility. Or there are some males who suffer from reduced sperm motility. Reduced sperm motility. Their sperms are not fully motile. Their sperms are not fully motile. So these males also suffer from infertility, right? So in these cases, when a couple is either having blocked fallopian tube, malformed ampulla, or malformed infundibulum, or the male is suffering from oligospermia or reduced sperm motility, they do not achieve the fertilization naturally, right? They suffer from infertility. So for those couples, IVF-ET comes to their help, right? For those couples, IVF-ET comes to their help. So in this case, ovum is collected from the female. Ovum is collected from the female. Sperms are collected from the male. If male is suffering from oligospermia, then his sperms are collected. Their number is increased by repeated ejaculations. Or sperm having reduced sperm motility. Sperms are not fully motile. So these sperms, which have lower this motility, which do not move actively, they and the ovum, they are mixed together in the petri dish. They fertilize the sperm, they fertilize the ovum. Then this fertilized ovum is transferred directly either into uterus. If both the fallopian tubes are blocked, then the zygote will be transferred into uterus. If one fallopian tube is blocked, another is normal, then we may put this embryo, we may put this zygote into normal fallopian tube, right? So depending upon the situation, this fertilized zygote, it may be either transferred into fallopian tube or into uterus. Then the embryo gets implanted, and after 9 months, the baby will be born. That will be known as a test tube baby. Now, there are some females whose uterus is completely damaged. There are some females who suffer from uterine damage, who cannot conceive, who cannot support the fetus in their womb. Some females, because of repeated abortions, their uterus becomes non-functional. Their uterus gets permanently damaged, right? Repeated abortions may cause permanent damage to the uterus. Or in some females, the uterus is having cysts in it. So that does not allow the blastocyst to get implanted. Or in some females, the uterus may be having fibroids in it. That does not support the conception, right? So those females whose uterus is permanently damaged, how can IVF-ET help them? If a female has got permanently damaged uterus, then how can IVF-ET help that female? So in that case, a surrogate mother may be used. A surrogate mother may be used. What is a surrogate mother? It is a lady who is hired for receiving this embryo in her womb. A legal document is signed with that lady that you will nourish this embryo in your womb for 9 months. And after 9 months, when the baby will be born, you will hand it over to his biological parents. And for that period, the woman is provided rent for her uterus, right? So surrogate mother, it means kiraya ki ma. It means kiraya ki ma, right? So a woman is hired. A woman is hired. A legal document is signed with her. She's made to understand that she only has to bear the child in her womb for 9 months. After 9 months, after birth, she has to hand over this child to his biological parents. Who are his biological parents? The parent which has donated the egg and the parent which has donated the sperm, right? So there was a couple.
Yes, sir.
The female was having damaged uterus, so she could not conceive. So she takes another woman on hire. So she donates her ovum. Her husband donates sperm. Zygote is formed.
Yes, sir.
Then that zygote is transferred into the womb of the surrogate mother. She nourishes this embryo for 9 months. After 9 months, she will give birth to a child, right? And this child, it will be then given to his biological parents. Biological parents. And for this period of 9 months, the surrogate mother will be paid. She will be paid. So we call it as kirai kima, right? So this surrogate mother, she may solve the problem for a lady who has permanently damaged uterus. This surrogate mother may solve the problem for a lady who has permanently damaged uterus. So she cannot bear her offspring in her uterus. So she may use the surrogate mother for which she will pay her. And after the end of 9 months, she may have a child. And those parents which donated sperm and ovum, they will be the biological parents of this child. This technique is known as surrogate motherhood. This technique is known as surrogate motherhood. And this surrogate motherhood has also served these infertile couples. It has helped them to bear children, right? So this is known as IVF-ET. Can you tell me who was the first test tube baby of the world? Who is the first test tube baby of the world? Have you heard about her? A baby was developed through this IVF-ET technique. Her name was Louis Joy Brown. Louis Joy Brown. She was born on 25th of July, 1978. Right? She was produced by Dr. Patrick Steptoe and Dr. Robert Edwards. And Dr. Robert Edwards at Oldham, Lancashire, UK. So the first baby which was born by IVF-ET, is Louis Joy Brown.
Joy Brown.
Louis Joy Brown was born on 25th of July 1978.
1978.
She was developed by IVF-ET technique by Dr. Patrick Steptoe and Dr. Robert Edwards at Oldham, Lancashire, UK. So she was born in United Kingdom, right? In the same year, India also produced its first test tube baby. The first test tube baby of India, Kanupriya Agarwal. Kanupriya Agarwal. Nicknamed as Durga, was developed by IVF-ET by Dr. Subhash Mukhopadhyay. Mukhopadhyay on 3rd October 1978. In 1978, India claimed to have produced its own test tube baby through IVF-ET technique. The baby, which was produced by Dr. Subhash Mukhopadhyay through IVF-ET technique, is named as Kanupriya Agarwal. She was nicknamed as Durga. Why she was nicknamed as Durga? Because on those days, the Durga Puja festival was going on in Calcutta, right? She was produced in Calcutta.
Yes, sir.
She was born during Puja festival in Calcutta. That is why she was nicknamed as Durga. And she was produced by the efforts of Dr. Subhash Mukhopadhyay through IVF-ET. So the first test tube baby of the world was Louis Joy Brown, and the second test tube baby of the world was Kanupriya Agarwal, nicknamed as Durga, and she was produced by Dr. Subhash Mukhopadhyay. Unfortunately, the claim of Dr. Subhash Mukhopadhyay, it was rejected by the state health department. Dr. Subhash Mukhopadhyay, he got disappointed because his claim was not entertained. He got disappointed and he committed suicide. Then government of India set up an investigation committee, and that investigation committee, after verifying the documents in the Dr. Subhash Mukhopadhyay's laboratory, after verifying his equipment, they came to the conclusion that the claim of Dr. Subhash Mukhopadhyay was exactly correct, right? They found suitable lab equipment, they found suitable documentation, how he produced this Kanupriya Agarwal through IVF-ET. They found it correct. Then it was officially announced that Kanupriya Agarwal is the first test tube baby of the India, and she was developed by the efforts of Dr. Subhash Mukhopadhyay. But until that, Dr. Subhash Mukhopadhyay had committed suicide in disappointment, right? So that is all about IVF-ET, right? So now you know IVF-ET is a technique which helps infertile couples to bear children, right? So female donates the ovum, male donates the sperm. Ovum and sperm, they are fertilized in the glass petri dish. Zygote is formed. Then this zygote is stimulated for development. It divides by cleavage. It forms 2-celled stage, 4-celled stage, 8-celled stage. At 8-celled stage, it may be directly transferred back to the fallopian tube of normal fallopian tube of the female. Then it will be known as ZIFT, zygote intrafallopian transfer. Or at 32-celled stage, it may be directly transferred into the uterus of the female. Then it is known as IUT. After transferring into the mother's uterus, the blastocyst implants, it develops, it takes 9 months for full formation of the fetus, and after 9 months, the lady gives birth to a child, and that child is known as a test tube baby. In certain cases, the mother's womb may be permanently damaged. Mother's uterus may be permanently damaged. So she could not bear the pregnancy, right? In such cases, a surrogate mother may be used. A surrogate mother is a second lady, which is hired, and after signing the legal documents with her, the fertilized embryo, the fertilized zygote may be implanted into her uterus. Where implantation occurs, baby develops. After 9 months, she will give birth to a baby, and that baby, after 9 months after birth, will be handed over to her biological or his biological parents, right? And the lady which nurtured this baby in her womb for 9 months, she is paid the amount as signed in the deed, right? So this technique is known as IVF-ET, and it has helped a lot of infertile couples to bear children, right? So that is the first use of ART. Then in this ART, there is another technique that is known as gift. Now in this ART, there is another method or technique that is known as gift.
Gamete intrafallopian transfer.
Intrafallopian
Transfer.
fallopian transfer. For whom this technique is used? This technique, it is only used for infertile females. So gift is given to females, right? It is used for females. So why it is used for females? There are some females who have got one blocked fallopian tube. One blocked fallopian tube. I told you earlier, a female needs to have both the fallopian tubes functional for fertility, right? If one fallopian tube is blocked, then the chances of fertility, the chances of fertilization, they are very much minimized, right? Or a female may have got malformed ampulla or malformed infundibula. if the ampulla or infundibulum of the fallopian tube is not functioning normally, the female may suffer from infertility. Or if female has got anti-sperm antibodies, if female has got anti-sperm antibody in cervical secretions, this also makes the female infertile. Normal female doesn't have anti-sperm antibodies. Those females which have anti-sperm antibodies, when they are inseminated, their antibodies kill the sperms. So that makes a female infertile, right? So if a female is having blocked fallopian tube, if a female is having structural abnormality in fallopian tubes, or if a female is having anti-sperm antibodies in cervical secretion, so these conditions make him infertile. To solve this problem of infertility, gift is used. Gamete intrafallopian transfer technique is used. So what is done in this technique? By laparoscopic means. By laparoscopic means, ovum is collected from such female. Ovum is collected from such female. And semen from her husband is also collected. This semen is washed and the sperms are chemically activated. Then after getting this ovum and semen, ovum is obtained from the infertile female, semen is obtained from her husband. Then both this ovum and semen, they are mixed together and transferred into normal fallopian. Normal fallopian tube. So gametes are transferred into normal fallopian tube. That is why we call it as gamete intrafallopian transfer. So the gametes are obtained from both male and female. Then these gametes are artificially transferred into normal fallopian tube, where the gametes meet each other, sperm fertilizes the ovum, a zygote is formed, then that zygote trickles down into the uterus and then it gets implanted and that leads to the pregnancy, right? So this technique is known as gift. So it has solved the problem of infertility in those females which have blocked fallopian tubes, which have malformed ampulla, which have malformed infundibulum, or who have anti-sperm antibodies in their cervical secretion. So these females can now bear children by the help of this gift technique. So their ovum is collected, the sperms from their husband are collected, then sperm and ovum mixture, it is both put together into the normal fallopian tube, where normally fertilization occurs. After fertilization, zygote is formed, zygote changes into embryo, embryo gets implanted, then blastocyst gets implanted, then fetus develops, embryo develops into fetus, then for 9 months it remains in the mother, and after 9 months the baby may be born. So this technique is known as gift, right? It is used for infertile females. Similarly, there is another technique which is used for some infertile males. Sometimes infertility may be present in males. That technique is known as ICSI. ICSI. It is pronounced as ICSI. It is pronounced as ICSI. ICSI stands for, its full form is intracytoplasmic sperm injection. This ICSI, it is used for males, as the gift was used for females. This ICSI is used to treat male infertility. There are some males who have got abnormal sperm morphology. There are some males who have got abnormal sperm morphology. For example, those males, they are suffering from globospermia. You know what is the problem in globospermia? We have discussed globospermia. Some males, they have got abnormal sperm morphology. They suffer from globospermia. Their sperms are having rounded heads without acrosome. So a sperm which has got rounded head without acrosome, which has not acrosome. In the absence of acrosome, that cannot penetrate the ovum, right? So this sperm is not able to penetrate the ovum, right? This causes infertility in males. This causes infertility in males, right? For some males, they have got reduced sperm motility. Reduced sperm motility. Motility. Their sperms are not fully motile. So they are unable to reach to the ovum, right? So in both the cases, males become infertile. If the sperm is not having normal morphology, if sperm is lacking acrosome, even if the sperm touches the ovum, but in the absence of acrosome, it cannot penetrate into the ovum. So this causes infertility. Or in some males, the sperms are produced in normal numbers, but those sperms are not fully motile. They are not actively making movements, right? So that is known as reduced sperm motility. So in both the cases, the males suffer from infertility. So how their infertility is treated now? In this, for solving this infertility case, the ovum is collected from female. Ovum is collected from female. Sperms are collected from male, right? Then this ovum, after it is kept in a petri dish, ovum is kept in a petri dish, and in the petri dish, this ovum is held in position by the help of a micropipette. By the help of a pipette, this ovum is held in position, and then a sperm is injected into it through a micro needle. A sperm is injected into it, into this ovum, through a micro needle. So sperm does not naturally penetrate the ovum. Sperm is not naturally penetrating the ovum. So sperm is introduced, sperm is injected into the ovum by the help of a micro needle. So that is why we call it as intracytoplasmic sperm injection. Intracytoplasmic, that means within the cytoplasm, sperm is injected by artificial method, right? So when this sperm is injected into this ovum by artificial method, this sperm, it fertilizes the ovum and it changes into a zygote. And zygote then divides by cleavage division and it forms an embryo. Then this embryo is transferred into the uterus of the female, where this embryo develops into a child and the child is born after 9 months. So this method of treatment of infertility is known as ICSI, intracytoplasmic sperm injection. This is used for infertile males. So this is sufficient for today. Our time is running out. Thank you for being with me.